friends. And thank you so much for choosing to spend part of your Tuesday, November 14th with me. Or maybe it's November 15th in your part of the world. And I see there are so many of you who are here and waiting. And I know that you're not really here for me. I know that you're here for my star guest, who probably doesn't even really know how popular he is, but he's about to know now because I know you guys are going to tell him. And I know that you've been really, really excited to see him. And I know that so many of you watched the trial with me, the portions that we watched together and the shows that we did together. And first, I just want to say shout out to Aunt Christine, because Aunt Christine is the aunt of Patty Corcoran, who is married to Dr. Joe Corcoran. And Christine is the one who told Patty about our show that we did with the Battle of the Experts. And when she commented on the show about how Dr. Corcoran was married to her niece, Patty, and she's known him for 25 years, and he's a man of integrity, I pinned that comment to the top of the stream. And so many of you were just so in love with what a wonderful man Dr. Corcoran is. And he reached out to me after the trial, thanks to Aunt Christine. So big shout out to Aunt Christine. And without any further mumbo jumbo, as Matt Bond would say, I present to you the most important witness, in my opinion, of the Kowalski v. JHACH trial, Dr. Joe Corcoran.
Oh my God. Melanie, you read that exactly like I wrote it. Thank you.
I know, I did pretty well. You know, I'm an actress on the side too. Not just a lawyer and a YouTuber. I'm also an actress and a mother of 5. And wow. I have a message here for you from Christine. And she said that she was, Patty needs you to pick up the dry cleaning. so she wanted you to know that, please, can you see the messages on your screen? That yeah. She loves my channel. I told you Dr. Goodhair was the real deal. Oh, she can call you Dr. Goodhair now? That's acceptable?
I guess so.
Okay, you're a man of integrity.
We'll talk about that over Thanksgiving dinner.
I'm sure you will. That and many other things. Now tell Joe that Patty needs him to pick up the dry cleaning. Yeah. So there you go.
You know what? My wife is so hardworking. I don't mind doing anything, because the more she finds this venture to be successful, the closer I get to my career ambition of being a kept man. So I'm all
well, good. I mean, you know, there's people waiting in line for that position, sir.
True, but not everybody's married to my wife. So
well, I think, and let's start there, because when the first time you got on the stand, I think it was October 11th, if I recall, was the 11th or 13th. Seems like a lifetime ago, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And on direct examination, you know, the first thing that the plaintiff's attorney always does is your pedigree. And he asks you a little bit about yourself and your background, qualifies you as an expert. And I think what resonated most, I know, with my viewers, is the humanity and how kind you are and how much you love your family. Because not only did you talk about your wife with such loving adoration, but also your children and how you moved across the country and then you came back because your family needed you. And it just, it really, I think, endeared you to the jury.
Well, thank you for saying that. You know, I will tell you, as you know, I've never done this before, and having the opportunity to work with amazing attorneys. I mean, incredibly skilled attorneys like Greg Anderson and Nick Whitney. It was such a blessing. And, you know, Nick is one of the smartest people I've ever talked to. And Greg is that rare, you know, it's often that you find somebody who's really excellent at strategy. And it's not uncommon to find somebody who's really excellent at tactic. Greg does it both really, really well. And, you know, I think that, you know, Greg asked me to, you know, kind of expose more of my personal side than I would have normally, but he did it purposefully because, you know, I had an office that was 2 miles from that courthouse. And so I may have seen somebody who was sitting in the gallery or even sitting in the jury box. And, you know, I wasn't the hired gun from out in California or Wisconsin or wherever. You know, I was a local guy, and he wanted them to know that I'm one of you, and I'm so dismayed to find out that they've been jurors have been referred to as the bus stop people. But that's not who I met when I was on the stand.
Well, I did not hear that. I don't know
Yeah,
where that came
that's
from.
what
That's a little
opposing counsel in the
really,
aftermath. Yeah,
that's
yeah,
a bit
I'm pretty
derogatory, but
disappointed. Yeah, but
it's not surprising.
yeah.
Um,
Well, they got throttled. You know,
yeah,
and I think
they did.
honestly, I think the verdict surprised them.
Yeah, I'm surprised that they're surprised because the way that we were watching it, at least my viewers, and as I told you before we came on today when we were
Yeah,
backstage, is that so many of my viewers are diagnosed with and suffering with CRPS, some of them for
yeah,
50 years.
yeah,
And they found this a safe place to watch, a safe place to chat. They've been very, very open about their struggles with diagnosis, about chronic pain,
hmm
and so we were not surprised. I
yeah.
think, parts of the verdict were a little bit surprising. Perhaps Beata's part of it. That's a new area of law. This could be a case of first
That's
impression
that's right.
in the tort world. And I'm a plaintiff's attorney,
hmm
so this is my wheelhouse. This
hmm
is, what I do. But I think the fact that you were a local
Yeah,
helped.
yeah, and it is. Greg said it as he was getting to the end of his closing argument. Is they just don't get it, and I think that the video that the current CEO and the former interim CEO circulated, was it was not allowed in, and I was disappointed with that decision, but I understand it. I respect
Hmm.
the judge's decision there, but yeah, it was kind of surprising because honestly, I thought that going into the latter days of the trial, the Kowalskis were protecting a win, but no, I really thought that the jurors were incredibly dialed in. The quality and the depth of the questions that they asked was off the charts. And so, you don't get that by just showing up,
You don't.
and
Yeah, no.
they took their job very seriously.
They did, and I'm surprised to hear such a derogatory comment. I'm in New York, and I've been practicing in New York for 30 years, and we don't allow the jury to ask questions.
Yeah,
So that is something that was very new to me and, to a lot of people who were watching this trial. But we could see by the questions they were asking that they were paying attention, that
yeah,
they were very methodical with regard to the detailed notes that they were
yeah,
keeping. And they asked so many questions that we wanted to know the answer to.
yeah. But, back to what you were saying about so many people with CRPS found this to be a safe space. That makes me so unbelievably happy. And many of those people reached out through very creative channels. They somehow found my old work email. They found they called my office where I haven't practiced for 20 years.
Oh,
They
wow.
found me on LinkedIn. They found me on Twitter, and I heard from them. And what was amazing, Melanie, is that it wasn't just patients with CRPS. It was a plethora of patients who just haven't been heard, whether it was because they were pain patients, whether it was because they had an orphan disease that just not a lot of people know about.
Mhm.
Yeah, they had sick kids, and they too were either accused or afraid of being accused of abuse. This case it really connected on a very deep level with a very wide swath of not just American
Mhm.
patients, but international patients. I mean, I've heard from Scotland, Australia, England, India, South Africa. It's astounding to me how many people paid attention to this, and it just makes it so wonderful to have been able to shine a light where a light had not been shown before.
And that's what we're doing here. We're not afraid to talk about tough
Yeah,
topics. And I don't know if you know this, but you're kind of a big deal around here.
Well,
as Ron
I'm
Burgundy
not.
would say, you're kind of a
I,
big deal around here, Dr.
well,
Corcoran.
that does not apply to my house, but I appreciate, maybe that's why I appreciate communities like this. I'm definitely
Um,
the guy that walks the dog and takes out the trash.
well, even so you do chores too. Not only do you call your
Yeah,
wife your bride, who you've been married to for
yeah,
23 years, you still call her your bride, but you also do the
yeah.
chores. I mean,
Well,
ladies, men,
she
pay
le-
attention. Men, pay
she
attention.
frequently leaves the house at 3 a.m. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Well, the restaurant. Yeah, let's talk about let's plug the restaurant real quick while we're here. So Patty, hi Patty. It's so nice to meet you. And thank you for watching and connecting us. Patty's Restaurant. They want to know, my viewers want to know if it's hard to get a reservation at the restaurant. It's called the Breakfast Company. Yeah.
It is called the Breakfast Company. It's not hard to get a reservation because they don't take reservations, but
Oh.
there is a phone ahead number. So if you go on the website, pick your location. There's one off State Road 70 in Bradenton, one off University, and which is Sarasota and Bradenton, and then one squarely in Sarasota. But yeah, you can phone ahead, put yourself on the list, and that's actually pretty effective. But yeah, so they did something that defied all logic. They actually opened a new restaurant in October of the pandemic year, 2020.
Wow.
It made no business sense whatsoever. But, we had lost my father-in-law, George, in 2019. And he was more than just a patriarch of the family. He was everybody's dad. Friends of mine felt like they were part of the family when George was around. And so they opened the restaurant as much to honor him as anything else. And each of the sites has a big community table that seats anywhere from 8 to 16 people,
Mhm.
and it's called Papu's table. It's named after him. Papu means grandfather, and
Aw.
and each of those tables has a picture that was taken at my daughter's sweet 16, of George and my mother-in-law Pauline and all of their grandchildren.
Aw.
So it's really it's a great place. My wife is pretty famous for nobody goes home hungry. So her
Mhm.
friends used to call her a food pimp,
Mhm.
and they came up with a motto for her, and it's "Let me love you with my food," and that's really become kind of the driving mantra of the Breakfast Company.
Oh, I love that. It's like a community table for people who are eating alone and they don't have to feel
Yeah,
alone. They can eat with other people. I love
you
that.
bet, you bet.
I think what also really resonated with a lot of jurors is that you were open about having had a failed back surgery.
Hmm.
And so you understand chronic pain because
Yeah,
if you underwent a back surgery, likely you were in chronic pain prior to and perhaps after.
yeah,
So
yeah. I still live with pain every day of my life. I Right now it feels like I've got a nail driven into my big toe,
I'm
straight
sorry.
from the top. But you know what? I found an amazing physical therapist. It took me a couple of tries, but I finally found an amazing physical therapist named Karen Taylor, who just retired. She was a gift, and she did not try to take my pain away. She said, "I'm going to help you learn how to manage your pain."
Mm.
And that shift in perspective was an absolute game changer for me. And listen, again, I have an incredibly supportive family, great friends, and if I'm having a bad day, they give me a little bit wider berth, and
Mhm.
when I can bring my A game, it makes me happy.
I'm
So
pretty sure you bring your A game a lot. We saw it on the stand, for somebody who's never
uh,
testified in a courtroom, you were unbelievably calm,
thanks.
articulate, measured, controlled. You obviously weren't scripted. You had a gift for improv, let's say. You have handled objections better than expert witnesses that I've seen because you knew to not answer the question if there was an objection. Most
Yeah,
witnesses just steamroll right through it.
yeah.
I loved how you got in before I forgot the Pulitzer Prize snippet. That's one of my favorite snippets. Like, there was a local paper that, in fact, one of the reporters who did that expose on this hospital was a Pulitzer Prize nominee. Love
Yeah,
that. I love that.
And it was actually two writers, but they did a phenomenal job. And I honestly, I think they got robbed, but yeah, it
Yeah.
was, I tried to, yeah, listen, I never knew what Howard Hunter was going to find objectionable.
Mhm.
I think I have not confirmed this with Scott from Recovery Addict, but he kept a counter of objections,
I know.
and I had 82 objections during my testimony in the plaintiff's case in chief. And so I think I have the record for this case
Oh,
for most objections. So not the first time I've been most objectionable, but
look at your
yeah,
trophy.
I mean, but Howard did. Howard was doing everything he could to throw me off my game, and it becomes a little bit of a challenge.
Mhm.
That as somebody described it as unshakable,
I
but
was gonna say
that's what my wife says is why she never argues with me, is because just I try to remain calm. I don't. I've never. If I'm yelling, I'm not effective, right? So
you were unshakable, and every time he
yeah,
objected to one of the questions that you were asked, he went down a list of every single objection he could make. It was
yeah,
objection, hearsay, asked and answered, no foundation, predicate,
yeah,
it wasn't just one, it was,
yeah.
but you got it. You did it. I mean, you did it. You were Maya's
Thanks,
guardian angel, I think. And I think a
thanks.
lot of my viewers feel that way. I mean, I love how you were practicing OBGYN, board certified, by the way. And then after your back surgery, you pivoted and went back to school
Yeah,
and got your master's. I mean,
yeah.
that's
Well,
unbelievable.
listen, I had little babies at home. I couldn't exactly sit on the couch and eat bonbons and feel sorry for myself.
Yeah.
I understand why some people do if they have that opportunity, but that's not who my parents raised. And you know I I'm old school. I believe that I'm a provider. But I've also been very blessed. I could not have gone through the recovery and gone back to school and started a new career if I didn't have Patty in my life, and I didn't have, and her entire family and my entire family. I'm one of 7 kids. And so, they talk about it takes a village. I had an incredible support system when I was going through a really, really scary episode. But, so we did it together.
That's incredible. So a lot of people
Yeah.
want to know how you got into this case. And I know that you mentioned during your testimony that you are
Hmm.
friends with one of the owners of Chris Craft Boats,
Hmm.
right? Steve
Hmm.
Heese, and that he introduced
Hmm.
you to Greg. But
Yeah.
how did it come about that you became involved in the case? And what about this case made you want to become involved in it?
So, when Steve and I were talking about it over dinner, and he shared with me 2 articles, one from the New Yorker and one from the USA Today. And I had never heard of the case. I had never heard of Maya. I had never heard of CRPS. Um, I did have patients with RSD, which is similar, but I'd never heard of CRPS. But when I read those articles on Saturday morning, I sent Steve a very brief email back, and I said, "Tell me how I can help," because how can you read about this and not have sympathy and empathy for what the family had gone through? My dad died when I was in medical school, and when I'm talking about losing him, I always say I lost my dad too young. Well, hell, I was in my 20s. Kyle was 9.
Yeah.
Maya was 11 when they lost their mom, and there is no going back. You know, damn you, Nick Whitney. He had me in tears just watching it on TV when he was talking about that Pixar movie and how the kids were trying to have one more moment, one more day with their dad,
Right.
and golly, I'm getting misty now.
I know,
That
me
was
too. Let's
such an incredibly emotional moment,
It was.
and that's I never met the Kowalskis until I was in the courtroom. I was due to testify on a Wednesday. I went down on a Monday just because I wanted to see what the environment was like. Because it was a strange place that I'd never, I didn't understand. So it happened to be that was the day that Maya testified. And I will
Oh,
tell you, she did such an incredible job speaking up. 17 years old, 17 years old with all of that trauma just piled up on her back. And she came off poised. She came off strong. She came off as tenacious, right? They
oh,
challenged her and
100%.
she was
Yeah.
tenacious, right? And I'll be honest with you, I had an opportunity to talk with Jack afterwards. And I said, as a girl dad, I share your pride about this young lady. I said, I think that she gave me a glimpse of Beata
Oh,
by,
yeah.
giving that testimony. She was amazing. Um, it's I did have an opportunity to talk with Maya as we happened to park next to one another in the parking lot, and I didn't realize I knew she was petite. I didn't realize she was so I want to be politically correct, vertically challenged.
Oh, how tall
She's
is she?
she's oh,
Sh
she's not tall.
She
She's
appears
I don't
tall. For
no,
some reason, I
she
thought she was
does
tall.
because she's
Yeah.
so slender, and she's but she's a very petite young lady, but oh my God, little but powerful.
You can see the resemblance to her mom too now if you see
Yeah,
the pictures side by side, and it's, look, it's our system. And I would tell my clients, there's no amount of money that can bring your mother back. There's no amount of money
yeah,
that can make it worth it. And we
yeah,
can't turn back the clock. And that's our system. And that's all that we had. And,
yeah.
I think the jury really sent a message with their number. And I think that it's because of you that they understood
No,
the false
thank you.
imprisonment claims and the negligent infliction claims by explaining how what the hospital did went against their own policies
Yeah,
and
yeah.
against the patient bill of rights.
And candidly, the system that supported all of it was just fatally flawed. It was just too deeply siloed, and there was there was no there was no guardian angel. There was nobody who was watching to make sure that all the pieces were moving and not colliding and not getting off track.
No
There was
guardrails, as
no,
you said.
yeah,
Yeah.
no guardrails. Yeah,
Yeah, and no patient advocacy, which is something that we talked about before this stream that, you know, not only has this case really worldwide
yeah,
shined a light on CRPS and other pain disorders that are hard to diagnose and people aren't understand and they're often gaslit medically, telling them that it's all in their head. But it's also shined a light on parental rights and the fact that you can take your child to the hospital and within a week your parental rights are stripped and your child becomes a ward of the state. You were one of 7. I have 5 kids. When there's a lot of kids, you're always in the emergency room for something. I mean, now we can go to urgent care and we don't have to.
right,
But as a parent,
right,
you're always
right.
questioned, right? How did your kid
Yeah,
break their leg? Especially if you have a dislocated elbow or something that they call a yanking injury.
right, right.
And it's scary, but I don't think that people understood
Yeah,
the full ramifications that something like this can happen.
yeah, yeah. And the wheels started turning against Beata the day that they took Maya to the emergency room. That day.
Right.
Um, she was a tiger mom. She had, she had that tough Eastern European upbringing. She was raised in communist Poland. Her dad was actually part of the solidarity movement with Lech Walesa that brought democracy to the country, right? They
Mhm.
worked together. And
Yeah.
so, think about the home environment that Beata was raised in, the destitute of communist Eastern Bloc life, and then a man who was willing to fight and give his life for better for her.
Yeah.
So she was doing the same for her daughter. She was advocating, she was fighting. I mean, think about it. Nobody knew what Maya had for how many months, well, up almost a year
Mhm.
until somebody says, it was actually a patient that suggested, this sounds like CRPS. And, I was thinking about it a little bit earlier this evening. If Sally Smith didn't believe that it was CRPS, okay, fine. But kind of step back and say, if I'm going to make something up and gaslight my daughter to believe that she has something, why am I going to pick something as hard to prove as CRPS, right?
Right.
There's about 1,000 other entities that you could, diabolically
Mhm.
imagine, but there was no checkpoint, right?
Yeah.
Think about so Sally Smith and Kathy Beatty. Kathy Beatty's testimony was that they had probably worked on 300 to 400 cases together
Yep.
in their 15 years. So that's
Yeah.
20, 26, 27 patients a year that they worked on average.
Just the two of them.
And they're not just there for the day. So there's probably a lot of overlap. There probably were very few weeks there where there wasn't a kid on DCF hold in the hospital. Why didn't the hospital put together, how much they love teams? Why didn't they
Mhm.
put together a team that would objectively review the cases? Okay, hey, where are we with this? And ideally, I would want to build that team with somebody from the community, a board member or a volunteer or somebody who is coming in without a medical bias, without a history of working with child protective team, without a history of abuse themselves. Somebody who was just able to say, wait, this doesn't seem right. Let's question this, right?
Mhm.
And I think that if there had been any kind of self-reflection, this case would have turned out completely differently. It was stunning to me when I sat in on the depositions of Doctors Perno and Napolitano. Perno was the chief of staff who
Mhm.
became the VP of Medical Affairs. Napolitano is a longtime chairman of the pediatric medicine department. And keep in mind, he was overseeing 15 divisions at that point. He's got 20 divisions today. Neither one of them had ever heard of the case. Neither
Mhm.
one of them had ever heard the name Maya Kowalski. Neither one of them had any awareness that this 11-year-old patient in their care lost her mom. And even after knowing about Beata's loss, there was no review, there was no
No.
self-assessment. And not what did we do wrong, but what could we have done better?
Yeah.
There
Yeah,
was no self-awareness.
there was no debrief. There was
No.
nothing. In fact, when I heard Dr. Napolitano testify that he didn't know about Maya Kowalski until he read about it in USA Today in May of 2023, prior to his deposition, I was shocked. My viewers were shocked. When
Yeah.
Dr. Perno testified at his deposition that he really couldn't be bothered attending one more meeting. He didn't need any more jobs to go to because he was on the risk management committee. Which brings us to a point that you've been making, that the risk management committee is different than the risk management department.
Yeah.
And in this case, the only people that I could see, tell me if I'm wrong, that were involved in real time were Hunter and Shapiro, because they were showing up at her dependency court hearings. So who else was involved in this case in real time from risk?
Well, Kathy Beatty was certainly involved. Sally Smith was certainly involved. There were various actors in the risk management department, but pull up. It's less about who in risk,
Mhm.
but more about how. So one of the things that the jury heard throughout the trial was, we were just following the orders that we got from DCF. True.
Right.
Where was DCF getting their direction for those orders?
Mhm.
So you had folks in risk, you had Sally Smith, although she wasn't involved in the care,
Oh, no.
she wasn't part of the team. I actually wrote a note and gave it to Nick. I said, Nick Saban doesn't play football, but is he part of the Alabama football team?
Mhm. Of
right?
course.
So yeah, okay, I get it. She didn't write any orders, but she was coaching the team,
She was
right?
looking at the records before she had authority to do so. She set the
Yeah,
wheels in motion for this thing, you know?
she did. And you know, it's interesting because there have been so many other families that have been through something similar, and they all said the same thing. You know, and I was talking with one family, and they said, you know, that her quote was, "This is child abuse. I'm going to prove it."
Mhm. 100%. And listen, I mean,
Right?
we'll do this another time, but the
Yeah.
privatization in Pinellas County of
Yeah.
DCF, which is only one of 6 counties in Florida that has a
Right.
privatized DCF system, follow the money is what I always say. If they're
Well,
not needed, they're not getting paid, just my opinion.
right.
You know, but
But the bottom line is that they were, you know, so the team at the hospital was saying, "Hey, we're concerned about this. We need an order to do that." And then DCF would write the order to do that, and then all children's would follow the order that DCF wrote
sure.
with all children's input,
Well,
right? So,
were you in court for her proffer where she said,
yes.
I think Greg, or I'm not sure if it was Greg or Nick who did the questioning of her, but said, well, why didn't you put any of Dr. Kirkpatrick's records in there, Dr. Hannah's records? And she said, it's not my job to put
Not
in the
my
other
job.
side. It's not my
That's not
job.
my job.
It's putting a financial burden on the family to hire an attorney, to get their own experts, a financial burden that they did not ask for, and especially in a case where there's unsubstantiated allegations.
And Melanie, I'm not disparaging your profession at all, but how many
Mhm.
attorneys would know how to navigate this?
That's what I'm asking you. So, advice for any family that finds themselves in a
Yeah,
situation like this in a hospital, what would you recommend that they do? What are their options? What kind of remedies do they have before it gets to this point?
yeah. So, you know, one of the things that is surprisingly powerful. You know, I know everybody gets labeled as a Karen these days when they ask for the manager.
Right.
But you know, everybody has a boss. In a hospital, everybody has a boss. At the end of the day, the CEO has a boss. It's called the board, right? The board has ultimate responsibility, and the board knew nothing about this case, right?
Mhm.
And Dr. Sowers, when he was the interim CEO, he said in the town halls, the board didn't know about it, so they couldn't do their job, right?
Mhm.
So what I would suggest, you know, you and I were talking about being an advocate, and you know, again, I have no idea it's shaping up, but I started this YouTube channel with no idea what my content was going to be, but I heard so many voices that asked me to keep the conversation going, right?
Mhm.
I will tell you the one thing that I've decided for sure is we are going to talk about the theme of advocacy and self advocacy, as well as advocating for loved ones who can't do it themselves.
Right.
In fact, I expect that I will call my audience members the advocates,
Ah,
right?
that's awesome.
Because
I love that.
that's one of my favorite words in healthcare. Is every nurse should be an advocate. Every physician should be an advocate. Every respiratory therapist, every physical therapist, everybody who comes in contact with a patient should be an advocate. And the sad news is that as the nuclear family has become a lot less concentrated than it was in my grandparents' lives,
Mhm.
we don't have those geographically close connections anymore. I mean, I have a brother who lives in Colorado, a sister who lives in Texas, a sister who lives in Maryland, a sister who lives in North Carolina, and two sisters who live in Florida, but not near me, right?
Mhm.
And heaven forbid, I got hit by lightning. Um, you know, I would need somebody to advocate for me because I wouldn't be able to do it for myself.
Right.
So what I would say is, you know, keep in mind that, you know, don't stop with just the charge nurse on the floor. Don't stop with just your doctor, right? When I was a facility chief medical officer, I had patients that came to the administrative suite and asked to speak with me. And you know what? I always I always bit down hard because I knew it was going to be a tough conversation, but I always listened because if they're that distraught and nobody's listening, right?
Right.
So I would tell every patient to, don't accept an answer that doesn't answer your questions, right? And keep going up the ladder until you find somebody who will speak up. And if the CEO isn't listening, find a member of the board. They're listed on the website of every hospital. And
Yeah.
many of them, most of them are members of the community.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's great advice. And also, it doesn't just go for your children, it goes for elder care as well. When you have an elderly parent in the hospital and you don't feel like they're being treated properly or in a nursing home even, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of nursing home negligence cases, unfortunately.
My mom, God bless her, she lived to her 95th birthday party and died about a week later.
Oh,
We are convinced she stuck around for the party. But she lived in a nursing home for the last 4+ years of her life. And, as a family, we have talked about it, that one of the reasons why mom got the care that she did is because we were present,
mhm.
right? I was there 2-3 times a week. My sister, who lives in the same area, was there 2-3 times a week. My father-in-law would go visit 2-3 times a week. There was always somebody there. Honestly, Melanie, most of the residents were warehoused,
Oh, so sad.
and it was sad. It was heartbreaking.
And that's what they did to Maya. And Beata couldn't go visit her. And that's
Yeah,
why this case, I think, maybe spoke to you. And that's why you felt like you had to
yeah,
get out there and be an advocate for Maya. And
yeah.
we thank you for that. I mean,
Oh, it was my
um,
pleasure. It was an honor.
tell us, I had some other questions here about, so you didn't even meet Maya and Kyle until you were already in court. How many days did you spend in court?
Well, I testified 4 times. I was there at least 2 other days. So I guess 6 days in court total.
Observing.
But I was also, I was sitting here with the live stream going and,
So you're watching it too.
shooting messages mostly. Samantha Lawrence, oh my gosh, what a future she's got. And what a great first trial she had. She
Mhm.
passed the bar during
That's
the
right.
trial. She got sworn in by Judge Carroll. She got to do appearing for the plaintiffs. She had such a great experience, but she was really my go-to. And if I heard something that didn't make sense, I'd say, ask about this, right? So I was trying to give them additional perspective. And so really I was in the trial basically from the time that I testified until the end of the case.
Right, and you even went to that deposition of Angela Green on a Friday
Yeah,
night,
yeah,
for 3.5 hours and sat in during her deposition when they were bringing
yeah.
in, bankers boxes full of documents.
Well,
What was
but
that
they
like?
didn't. So let's get that straight.
Yeah, tell
When
us.
we got there, there were 2 dozen papers. Um, and one of the things, if you read the deposition, one of the things that Nick Whitney, is a very smart guy, incredibly bright future, and Nick said, the judge said, if there is a scintilla of odor, I want it turned over.
Mhm,
We still to this day, Melanie, have not ever seen the actual IJ. We've seen it referenced, but
right.
so there was the 2 box. We walked out with a banker's box full of papers. Okay, those papers were printed after the start of the deposition. So they showed up with a couple of papers here and a couple of papers there. And you know what it was? It was all the stuff out there. It was all the
Mhm,
peripheral tangential garbage, half of which we already had.
mhm,
Okay. But Nick knew what the judge had ordered and held their feet to the fire. And they literally took an hour, went into Mr. Hunter's office, and printed out everything that was on Miss Green's laptop, and emails and saved files and draft files. And then at the end, we were told that there were 2 more boxes. Well, it was Friday at 7:30, almost 8 o'clock.
mhm.
You know, um, So, you know, so I don't know who did eventually make it through that box, but, you know, there was so much stuff that we did not have, including explaining how the IJ really came to be. So think
Right.
about this. Typically, an immediate jeopardy is dropped during your survey. And if, you know, your survey team can be there 3, 4, 5 days. If it's day 1, day 2, day 3, it doesn't matter. If they find immediate jeopardy, an egregious and widespread problem, or a problem that is an immediate threat to life and patient safety, the survey is stopped cold. The survey ends right there. We can't go on until that is fixed. Before the survey team leaves the property, you have to have started to remedy that outlier, and you have to present a mitigation plan in writing. Here's how we're going to fix this. You then have 10 days to submit a formal written plan, and I mean detailed. You have 10 days to submit that. And then by day 23, not 23 more days, 13 days later,
Mm-hmm.
you have to have executed on it. Okay? So I still have no idea how a survey takes place January 7th through January 11th of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
3 weeks later, on January 31st, a report comes out and references an immediate and ongoing immediate jeopardy that's post-dated to September 20th, 2018, 4.5, 5 months earlier. It defies logic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, listen, anything can happen, right? Anything can happen. So, but I have zero clue how that happened.
So that's the Joint Commission report that was never turned over,
That's
right?
correct.
And it
That
was
was published by the
yeah,
Pulitzer-nominated authors of the Tampa Bay Times series.
they reported on it, but they didn't publish the exact report, right?
They actually
Okay.
did. So, and I can't remember the date of the article, but one of the articles specifically attached the 49-page report that said ongoing IJ. It was the January 31st, 2019 report. So
Wow.
it's out there. You can, if you go to the Tampa Bay Times website and look at their series called Heartbroken, you can find the article and you can find that attachment and you can read all 49 pages of it.
So it's publicly available, but they just didn't turn it over to the plaintiffs.
Well, they did. I don't know if they turned it over, but we've had it for
Oh, so you had a copy
months,
of it.
right?
Yeah.
Thanks to the Tampa Bay Times. Okay.
Right. And the Pulitzer
What they
Prize
never
nominee.
turned over, Melanie, was the actual notification. Hey, immediate jeopardy, here are your problems. Now they did share a summary letter, and Mr. Hunter asked me to go through that in his cross-examination on that last day in the rebuttal. And so we had the summary, but there's a whole bunch of detail that would have been shared with the hospital that was never shared with us, but it didn't matter.
Right.
It didn't
matter. How did the jury react to the bombshell of the IJ that you testified to?
So I will tell you that I was not focused on the jury's response. Honestly, I knew that I had a story to tell. I knew that I needed to tell the story. And I knew that at any moment I was going to get objected to, right? So I was really focused on delivering the message, okay? I know that juror number 1 spoke with Nick Whitney, and this was relayed to me by Nick yesterday. And he said that, you know, the jury in general felt that something wasn't making sense. And it wasn't until I was able to testify about the IJ that they were able to connect the dots.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the picture came into focus, right? And so, this feeling that they had was endorsed, was vindicated,
Yes,
right?
validated. They were
Your
validated.
gut told you that there was a problem here, and let me help you understand it.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to, to be able to deliver that kind of an impactful testimony is really rewarding. Honestly, I don't know that I've ever had a moment like that in my life. It was, it was why I got involved. When I first got involved, I was only an advisor. I was not going to be an expert witness. And I got involved because Greg and Nick, as brilliant as they are, they've never run a hospital and they didn't know how it operated. So I helped them understand how it operated. And it was interesting because one of the things, listen, it was, I won't say intimidating, but it was very uncomfortable being constantly challenged by Mr. Hunter. But what kind of steeled my nerve was I knew that I knew more about the surveys and the process than he did.
Oh yeah.
And so being able to say, no, that's not correct. No, that's not how it works. No, that doesn't happen. It became really easy because I was, Greg and I talked about what an expert witness was supposed to do. In the British system, the expert witness actually is there for the judge and the jury to ask questions. So you're there to educate the judge and the jury. And so that's how I tried to approach the job and consequently I didn't give Nick and Greg everything that they would have asked for, but
Sure.
they gave me that latitude. They gave me permission to maintain my integrity and not to get hyperbolic.
And you know where your integrity was really tested. Here's another one of my favorite snippets we call him Hunter because I'm from New York. So we're like, and here's another question from Hunter. Hunter said to you when he was asking you all the things you reviewed, he said, well, did you review the deposition of Dr. Rochelle Smith? And you said, I don't recall that. And he said, good, because she didn't give a deposition. And we were like, what? He totally tried to trick you on that question. We were so angry.
Yeah.
And we were also very angry every time he referred to you as Mr. Corcoran instead of doctor, because we found that to be very, very disrespectful. I know that I only have you for like 10 more minutes and I have a bunch of people who gave super chats with questions. So if you don't mind. Okay. Seashell, thank you so much for your super chat. What was it like when you finally met the Kowalski family after your research? I can't even
trigeminal neuralgia.
Thank you. Chronic facial pain, also known as the deleting disease. Appreciate this coverage so much, Mel.
Yeah. My mom had trigeminal neuralgia. It's an inflammation of the facial nerve, and it's just this intense pain on this entire side of your face. It's horrible. So, Seashell, my empathy for your diagnosis and for your pain. The Kowalski family is truly an American story. They're hardworking, they're blue collar, they're committed to one another, they're committed to living life the right way. It's impossible to not love that family when you meet them. I will tell you, I'm asking everyone in the audience to please keep all three in your prayers. It's easy to be focused on Maya, and Jack had a very visible role too. Please keep Kyle in mind. Kyle is stoic, and I will tell you, I was that angry young man, and it's not a healthy place to be.
Yeah.
And I hope that Kyle and his mom and his sister and his dad are all getting appropriate care. They're an amazing family.
We have been very worried about Kyle. A lot of people have shown a lot of empathy for Kyle, how hard this must be for him to be going through this and to be almost, he felt like, I think, I mean, there was some testimony that he was Maya's protector. And that one time she testified that I think she broke her pinky or something playing football with Kyle. And he felt so guilty, that he was throwing her back maybe into a flare up. So our prayers are with the entire Kowalski family, and we've gotten to know them too, and we feel like they're part of our own family. Just like we feel like you are our doctor, and Aunt Christine is our aunt now. This is like a family here.
So if she's your aunt, then call her Theatina, like everybody in the family does.
Theatina, all right.
Thea, Thea. Thea is the Greek word for aunt.
Theatina, all right.
Theatina, Yeah.
Thank you. Chantal Caesar, thank you for your super chat. That simple okay near the end of your testimony was everything. Everything.
Maybe just a
Uh,
little sarcastic, but yeah, thanks.
I mean, it didn't come across that way, but when you stood up to take those documents from Hunter, that was something that everyone was in love with too. They're like, ask him why he did that. I'm like, I think I know why he did it, but if you want to
Yeah.
explain why you did it, thank you.
I was just being polite.
Yeah, you just wanted to,
Whatever.
or how much taller what's the height difference between you and Mr. Hunter?
I've got him by a good couple inches.
How
So
tall are you? Do you mind if I ask you that?
6'1".
Because you appear
Yeah.
tall. Yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah.
He doesn't appear so tall, but
Yeah.
Marianne, thank you for your super chat. Clearly, the defense didn't know how CMS and Joint Commission work, both independently and collaboratively. Your knowledge exposed and then sank the defense.
Well, and again, as I pointed out to Mr. Hunter, that once the CMS surveys are done, typically they're done by ACA or state surveyors, so it gets even more complicated. But yeah, no, again, I thought there was a real advantage in my understanding of how they worked and the attorneys. So play to your strengths.
Yeah, well, you did that very well. I told you you have a
Thanks.
future as an expert witness if you want to open consulting business. This is
We'll
your
talk about
might have
that,
found your
Melody.
niche here. I'm just
Yeah,
saying. I'm just saying because
this was such a unique set of circumstances. I mean, this was a great family that the hospital did them dirty. I mean,
yeah.
the text messages about, she can't keep up the charade forever,
Oh,
right?
I'm calling her
And
ketamine
then and
girl.
then the later on, ketamine girl, for God's sake. But then about a week after the can't keep up the charade from Sally Smith, I think it was Dr. D said, "Well, can we do this again? Because we need to catch her and bring that to court."
Mhm.
It's like, you're not there to entrap. You're there to take care of a 10-year-old girl.
Uh-huh.
And so this was a very unique set of circumstances. And again, being an expert was never on my list of things to do, but it was such a rewarding experience on so many levels, and not the least of which is just the incredible support and love that I feel from your audience and others that from around the world that have heard what I was talking about and want me to keep saying more. So
Yes.
it's my head is enormous. My head is like,
And I've linked
I'm a
I
bobblehead guy.
you're kind of a big deal around here, I'm just saying. I've linked your
Please tell
YouTube
Patty.
channel below in the
Oh,
description.
thanks.
Everyone will follow you. I'm sure they've already followed
Thanks.
you. I think you're the fastest growing channel I've ever seen. I think you had 2,000
Oh,
subscribers in the first 24 hours, which is, kind of
yeah.
unheard of.
Yeah.
But also I was going to say Dr. Vose's text messaging about after Beata took her life about, oh, I predicted this. Oh,
I
so
saw
sad. Like
this coming.
maybe, she'll
Do
have a better life
something.
now. But
Yeah.
that went to the foreseeability that they knew that this could potentially happen and that they kept on going. They kept on pushing
Yeah.
their agenda.
The statement that maybe now she'll have a better life. I know we did the right thing. What the hell did you do?
Yeah.
What did you do?
Yeah.
How did anyone in the Kowalski family benefit from more than 3 months of hospitalization?
That's what made no sense also to the jury. How could they
Yeah.
say the CRPS is made up and Beata has Munchausen and then bill for the CRPS? That was another big
Yeah.
problem that they had for the $500,000
Yeah.
in CRPS treatment that they didn't really give
Yeah.
her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jen wants to know, thanks, Jen, why is an IJ report hidden from the public?
So, all of the surveys are privileged, confidential, and I don't know what the legal reasons are, but I mean, we could not access the anything from the Joint Commission and couldn't access anything from CMS without a Freedom of Information Act request,
Mm.
which we didn't have time for. The Agency for Healthcare Administration here in Florida is they do licensure and regulatory in the state. All of their reports are public because of the sunshine laws that we have.
Mhm.
But anything from the joint, that is proprietary. That is confidential.
It's
Scary.
That's interesting and scary. Yeah. Blessed in Texas. Thank you for your super chat. As a Florida CMO, can Doc explain how, I guess that's Kathy Beatty's position, should work? For example, in his hospital, why are private CPIs protected by Chapter 39? What's the history on that?
So I don't know the law, but there are reasons why immunity makes sense. I took care of tens of thousands of patients, all female, in my practice. Unfortunately, we identified a number who were in abusive relationships, and we helped them get help. So we need to be able to offer help, to speak up. And we shouldn't necessarily be liable for see something, say something. So the concept of immunity makes sense.
Right.
Does it go too far? Should there be time limits on, what have you? Here's my thing is, okay, fine. You have concerns that Maya is being abused. You separate the source of the suspected abuse from the abused, but 15 days later, nothing is different. 30 days later, nothing is different. 60 days, 90 days, nothing is different. At what point do you go, maybe it's something else, right? So again, there was no element of self-reflection. There was no questioning it. Instead, and what you saw in the text messages is it became more about proving that we are right rather than taking care of that little girl over there.
Dr. Cave
They
says,
lost the forest for the trees.
When you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Emotional support paintbrush. Thank you for your super chat. Dr. C, I'm a counselor with CRPS. Please look up EMDR for pain and Palouse mindfulness, free course for dealing with pain that meds don't fix.
Thank you. I wrote it down. I'll look it up.
Awesome.
Tomorrow morning.
Maybe you could talk about that on your channel.
Yeah.
McRae, thank you for your super chat. Dr. C, I do think it would be great to have advocates. My dad was killed by his cancer doctor because when he reacted badly to his chemo, he told him it didn't make sense. It was all in his head. Oh, I'm so sorry.
That is truly sad.
I am so sorry.
What's really surprising is I have such a soft spot in my heart for nurses and doctors and others who work with cancer patients. Listen, again, my dad died when I was in medical school. That probably had a lot to do with why I ran to the other end of the life spectrum and delivered babies. And there's such joy in handing a baby over to a family that entered the room as a couple, right? And so there was a lot of upbeat. Not plugging the restaurant again, but at the restaurant a couple of months ago, I had a patient who was a customer there, and she introduced me to the 30-year-old woman that she was eating breakfast with. And I delivered that 30-year-old, and that 30-year-old was about 6 months pregnant. And they asked me, "Would you come out of retirement to keep the tradition alive?"
Oh, right? I love that.
It's such an incredibly warm specialty to be in. So I'm really bitterly disappointed about the cancer doctor.
I'm sorry. Solo Yellow, thank you for your super chat. Dr. C, please speculate on why Hunter refused to produce the actual IJ when related documents were produced. Also, thank you for what you did. Yeah, I think that we've talked about that, and I don't know that you can really talk about his strategy, but blessed in Texas. I was my dad's advocate 3 months in the PICU, progressive hospitals. I always had my pad, noted it all. Nurses respected me. Acute care loved that. I had it after his transfer. So did rehab.
You know what's funny? I don't think that All Children's was prepared for the level of documentation that Beata produced. I watched the documentary when it came out in June, when it was on Netflix in June, and ask Patty. I kept saying, I can't believe that she wrote that down. I can't believe she took pictures. I can't believe she shot video. It's remarkable.
And so much of that was not allowed into evidence.
No. Oh, there's so much more to this story.
Yeah.
So much more. Yeah.
I know that we're short on time, so let's just try and run through this. Purple Pros, thank you. Any opinion on doctors and nurses taking orders from social workers?
It's cart leading the horse.
Yeah. Jennifer, thank you. Thank you, Dr. C. Appreciate your willingness to keep this conversation going for those who suffer with chronic pain and struggle with getting healthcare professionals to listen.
You're welcome. I hope that the community can answer a lot of questions for one another, right?
Lori Ward, thank you. Dr. C, you have a rare gift. Mel, I love your channel. I lost my mom at age 12. I'm so sorry, Lori. I'd like to hear more about culture in JHACH. So maybe that's another topic that you could write down for your channel, because you're going to have a lot of things to talk about.
I hope so.
Amber, thank you. Thank you, Dr. C. Is it possibly there is no info on Maya or other upcoming cases included within the missing reports? Or what do you think they are hiding?
Is it possible that there is info?
I think they could have redacted that portion of it if they turned it over. So I don't know.
Well, they redacted everything with Howard and Ethan's name on it. So there were a lot of redactions.
So we knew they were involved, but I don't think the jury did. Laura,
they were very involved in her
Denise
hearings.
Thank you. Thank you, Melanie and Dr. Great Hair. Oh, now you're great hair. You've been promoted from good hair to great hair. I see some endorsements in your future. That pomade that you have, maybe we'll get you that endorsement, maybe a little blow dryer endorsement. Lots of admiration. I'm already subscribed to your channel. You are a natural.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you, Marianne, for your super chat. In the 327-page sanctions document, starting on page 126, is the CMS survey report dated 1/11/19. Is that just the summary?
That is depending on which version of that report you're looking at. The original report was 49 pages, and some versions print out differently, and it runs up to 51 pages. There's a second version that runs about 140 pages, and that has both the left columns and the right columns filled out. So in the left columns are the findings that the Joint Commission cited were problematic, including those that led to the IJ. But then the right side, those two columns reflect the hospital's plan of correction. I'm not familiar with the sanctions document. I know that it's quite the book, but I've not looked at it. But that will tell you what you're looking at.
Interesting.
But there's a lot to read through in that CMS survey.
Southern Mom, thank you. I worked at HCA Corporate Nashville for around 13 years. Great organization. Tone at the top was always important there. Do you think that was missing at JHACH? Yeah,
for sure. And that's what I said early on in the testimony, is that people would have lost jobs if that happened in one of my hospitals that I was responsible for. And ultimately, Dr. Ellen and Ms. Crane and 6 others did lose their jobs, but man, that horse was long out of the cart. I will tell you one thing, and thank you, Southern Mom, for sticking up for HCA. I had concerns when I first joined HCA because it was a for-profit company. But when I went back to business school, I think it was my finance professor said, for-profit and not-for-profit is only meaningful to the IRS. All it differentiates is whether you pay taxes or not. Every single business, including my wife's restaurant, has to make more money than it spends, or else it runs out of money and can't pay the light bill, right? I will tell you that I think that HCA's commitment to patient care and trying to get it right, and we don't always get it right, and I don't work for the company any longer, so full disclosure, but I think that commitment really stemmed from the fact that 2 physicians and a businessman started the company. And I don't think that they ever lost that focus and that commitment. I know that there were 2 situations that I can very clearly recall where there were decisions to be made where one was about doing the right thing for the patient, but it was going to cost us penalties, reduced reimbursement. Both times I escalated them to my boss. We then escalated them to his boss. Both times there was very little discussion. What's best for the patient? Let's do that, right? So they knew that they were going to lose money. They knew that they were going to leave money on the table, but they did the right thing. And so I will tell you that I felt very well supported by this for-profit giant. So it can happen. And it was missing at Johns Hopkins. Interestingly, the current CEO came from HCA. She used to, her office, we did not work together. She came into the hospital just after I left for the job out west, but her office and my office were about 25, 30 feet across from one another. So I hope that she brings that HCA commitment that she grew up with.
Dr. Timmons says, Dr. Corcoran, I can really appreciate your professional insight and your admission as to being an angry young man really hit home on many levels. I'd be happy to work at a hospital you helped run.
Oh, thanks.
Kathleen, thank you, Kathleen. Thank you for your service in getting some justice for Maya. 4 of my 5 kids are survivors of child abuse and injustice by the prosecuting attorney who money laundered with the perpetrator. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Kathleen.
Oh my goodness.
That is terrible. Sarah Adams, who does have CRPS, says, how much does the good doctor know about CRPS?
Only what I learned through this case. I had never heard of it before. I had to educate myself. So Sarah, you know a lot more about it than I do.
Yeah, and we talked about this before the show because I had a lot of questions from viewers who wanted specific questions, me to ask you specific questions about CRPS and advocacy, and we just, we didn't have time for that because your specialty is hospital administration, and that's what we're,
I had an injury 20 years ago, and I lost my clinical practice. So I have not taken direct care of patients in 20 years. So I wish that I could be more helpful, but I can't.
Yeah. One more before, and then I'll let you go because I know you have another appearance. Shauna, thank you, Shauna. How did Smith and Beatty come in with binders of Maya's medical records when they no longer worked for the hospital? Why would they keep her records?
Those are questions for Smith and Beatty.
Irony is that MVPs don't take their life. Okay, I'm going to let you go because I know you have to go do your hair for the next, your next.
Really? Come on, it's not bad.
I'll send some hair and makeup people over. No, it looks amazing. It looks amazing. But you need a little, maybe you want a little touch up in between. Thank you. I cannot thank you enough for reaching out to me, for choosing to come on to my show, and for, being the shining light that you are.
Oh, thank you.
If you have anything to say in closing about any changes that you would like to see happen as a result of this case, please feel free. I'm going to give you the screen for 1 second.
Well, yeah, thanks, Melanie. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you for inviting me on your show. And thank you, Theatina, for introducing me to this amazing attorney. I do hope that the things that we can discuss, not only tonight, but in the coming weeks, months, years, will help hospitals to think a little differently. I hope, and I do believe, that this verdict is going to send a message to Hopkins broadly, and that maybe they didn't get it right. I hope that there is some self-reflection. If we do put patients first, it's hard to make wrong decisions about what we should be doing. And so I'm hoping that the conversations that we have through the YouTube channel, through Twitter, are enough to make those ideas really coalesce and be actionable by the healthcare providers that we're relying on. The system is it's easy to say that the system is broken. I think the system is more bruised than broken. I think there are some amazing people doing amazing things. And let me make it very, very clear. My personal belief is that 95%, maybe more, but 95% of the nurses, the doctors, the physical therapists, the respiratory therapists, the janitors, the food service people who work in hospitals and healthcare systems wake up in the morning and want to do the right thing. We as leaders and administrators need to make sure that they can do the right thing. And we also need to keep an eye out for those 5% who maybe think the rules don't apply to them the way that they apply to everybody else. So let's work together, come up with some ideas, and then let's circulate those ideas. I know a few guys that
I got a
maybe
guy.
we can reach out to them.
I got a guy. Yeah. I got a guy for everything. Right. You gotta get a guy.
I said that for the New Yorker. I got a guy.
You got a guy. You got a guy. You need that? I got a guy. Thank you,
Melanie,
again.
Thank you so
just keep on keeping on. You're doing
Sounds great.
God's work, and from your mouth to God's ears about these changes, and maybe we can work together on some of this stuff and see if we can
just remind your audience about
yes.
the
Go
links
subscribe
down
to his
below.
YouTube channel. Listen, somebody just said in the chat, Dr. C is gonna realize that he's got groupies. This is gonna be a whole thing for you. Welcome to the wild, wild west of YouTube, because this is
There you go.
you'll get it.
I'm excited to be here and thrilled that I was invited in. So thank you for that. And thank you to the audience.
Okay.
It's great to meet you guys.
Hopefully we'll see you again real soon.
That would be great. Thanks very much.
Thanks again. Bye. Wow, you guys, what did you think? I'm sorry I didn't get to so many questions in the chat, but we just ran out of time. He had a hard stop, and I even kept him a couple minutes after his hard stop. Thank you, Crazy Cat Queen, for your super chat. The irony is that MVPs don't take their life. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, remember what happened to Dee Dee Blanchard? She was unalived by her daughter and her boyfriend. She did not take her own life. She never would have done that. She was too narcissistic. Clarabella, thank you for your super chat, and thank you for listening to us be advocates, because that's what we do. Hi, Jason. Thanks for the super chat. Will you show the good doctor my meme? I emailed you earlier today and I said, can you make a meme of Dr. Corcoran? And then maybe we could show that to him, but I don't know if you did, because I didn't get a chance to check my email. How frustrating was it to sit there while Hunter asked you about the documents that he knows that you don't have and only he does? I think he explained that to us, because he knew that he knew more about the case and about the IJ than Hunter did. So very, very interesting conversation. I'm glad that so many of you were here and able to share in it. Please go subscribe to his YouTube channel. And Elisa says, I've said it before and I'm saying it again. This man could be a professor and I could listen to him forever. I think a lot of people feel that way. Jenna Rose, I figured they made their final decision based on Dr. C's testimony. I thought so too. I thought that was their turning point. If any juror was on the fence, once they heard about how egregious these findings were and how there was no safety net and how so many patients were falling through the crack, if they were on the fence, they would have known it. That would have shifted their position, I think. In my opinion. Yes, Christina B. That was absolutely apparent that Dr. C knew more. Yeah, I see CRPS and me. Dr. C took care of Maya. He sure did. He sure did. And listen, I know you guys sent me a lot of questions, and we had a discussion before he came on. And I just, I have to be very aware and very cognizant of the fact that I don't want to ask him any questions or have him give us any information that could jeopardize any kind of an appeal. And, so we really wanted to do, I wanted to do a more broad overview of the case, of his significance in the case, of what he wants to see come out of this case, because so many of us want to see public awareness, right? And I'm so glad that he's on our side and he wants to do that too. And, he did this out of the goodness of his own heart. He was motivated by the facts of this case to testify. He was not originally hired as an expert. He was hired as a consultant. Hi, Steph. Sometimes all the objections also interrupt the flow and the thought patterns of the attorney and the witness. Greg Anderson was susceptible to this tactic. Yeah. And a lot of people make objections to throw you off your game, to get you off your groove, to disrupt the flow. And I especially hate when they do that in openings and closings, because that's really disruptive. But for some attorneys, that's a tactic that they use. And I don't like it. But we've seen a lot of different styles with all of the trials that we cover. And we've saw a lot of different styles here. Brilliant testimony, says Donna. I agree. Caroline Ciano, hello. This man is a beautiful soul. I agree. Jacqueline Cullen, Hunter tried to out-expert the expert and he wasn't successful. It's true. Had the hospital not dragged this out, they probably would have had a different outcome as well. Yes, Cat Lady, agreed. But you know what? The $50 million in punitive damages could be sustainable, because the fact is they found 211 million in compensatory damages and then 50 million in punitives. They could have awarded 600 million in punitives, right? Up to 3 times the jury amounts. I mean, the compensatory amount. So It could be a sustainable number. My hope, like I've said before, is I hope this case settles, and I hope that they don't have to go through any more litigation. And I think that bringing awareness to all of the things, all of the issues that the Kowalski family brought awareness to, that goal has been achieved. And for you CRPS warriors and all of my chronic pain warriors, we see you and we hear you. And there's a lot more awareness to CRPS than there ever has been. And I have a line of merch. It's linked in the description. It's linked in my page. It's Team Maya merch. All the proceeds from that merch are going to go to CRPS research. So if you are so inclined to buy a t-shirt or a hat, it's kind of cute. And we're going to donate the proceeds. Hi, Denise. Oh, I think we already put this up, but thank you. My email is here. Wait, hold on. What do I think of their criminal case? Wait. Hi, Betty. Hi, Betty. What do I think of their criminal case? Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Greg Anderson came out, I think it was yesterday, maybe the day before. I think I was on vacation this weekend, so it feels like, I don't know when I heard it, but there was some testimony that was not allowed to be elicited at the trial, that it was in one of the PT's notes that Maya had disclosed that she was sexually abused in the hospital, and that a doctor came into her room, someone who she thought was a doctor, and said, "Oh, I need to take a look." He came in without a chaperone. He was by himself. She described him as wearing a white lab coat. Boy, that lab coat is just following these doctors around everywhere. Sally Smith too. And a stethoscope. And he said, "I need to take a look." He lifted up the sheets, he pulled down her pants, and he looked at her parts for what seemed like Maya to be a very long time. And then she cried. It made her cry. And they have now filed a new lawsuit, or they're preparing to file a new lawsuit against JHACH for that incident. I believe she also went to the sheriff's department or the police department and made a police report. They don't know who this person is. This may be a difficult case to prove. It may be that they're filing it for leverage. It's a civil complaint that they're going to file, for negligent hiring. If they find out who this alleged doctor is, negligent security. How did this person get into the hospital? She was in the PICU. They're supposed to have, airtight security there. It may be for leverage. It may be for settlement purposes. I personally feel like Maya's had enough litigation to last her a lifetime. This was 9 weeks of a trial, 5 years of litigation. It's been 7 years since this happened. And I don't know that it's in her best interests to have any more. She filed a criminal complaint. She did. But Anderson also said that he's filing a civil lawsuit against the hospital. Yeah, she did file a criminal complaint with the police too. Yes, but they don't know who the perpetrator is. And I don't know that they'll be able to find out. So we will see where that goes. I feel like I want Maya to just be able to breathe and to move on with her life. And that's my own personal opinion. You can come for me in the comments if you disagree with me. Come for me in the comments. I have merch that says that too. But as my logo says right here, if you're new, I'm not a cupcake. I am not a cupcake. And that pink sign that you can't read says, "You cannot make everybody happy. You are not a cupcake." I have opinions. I'm going to share them. You don't have to agree with them. You can come for me in the comments. Just be respectful, because this is a very respectful channel. My moderators are amazing and they don't let the bullies in, which is why a lot of CRPS patients came here to watch this stream at night when I would debrief, and they would go to Recovery Addict during the day, because he was also very kind and he was moderating his chat, because the chats on Law and Crime and Court TV were toxic. And I found some of their coverage to be toxic too, especially on Court TV. The way they were shaming Maya with those homecoming pictures. I think they lost a lot of viewers. Hi, Mozzie66. Thanks for an informative show. My first time here. I really appreciate your cover. Well, thank you for coming. Please subscribe. It doesn't cost anything. Just hit the subscribe button below and hit the bell so you get notified of all of the times that I go live. I usually go live because I don't like to edit, and recording videos and then editing them takes me way more time than it would to just go live. So that's what I do. So if you hit the bell for all notifications, you'll always know and you'll never miss a thing. Melissa and Maya must have been so terrified. I can't even imagine. I cannot even imagine. As if everything that happened to her in that hospital wasn't bad enough. Thank you. Thank you, Lori. It was in Dr. Katzenstein's notes. Katzenstein, contemporaneous to the complaint. Yes. Thank you, Caroline. Yes, that exactly, Melanie. That child deserves peace. I know. I just want her to be able to move on with her life, to not have to go through any more of the trauma. We saw her at the beginning of this trial. We saw her at the end of this trial. I saw her last night on Cuomo. Was it Cuomo last night or the night before? And she looks so much more refreshed now and better. And the beginning of the trial was rough. As the days went on, there were days where she couldn't even come to court because she wasn't feeling well. You could just see the decline in her physical state, in my opinion, and her physical demeanor. And you could tell that she was either having a flare up or that this was really, really, really hard on her. Really hard on her. Dr. Corcoran just texted me. Thank you so much. The time flew. I know an hour seems so short because you guys, I can talk for like hours on this or anything really that I talk about. Sassy, I told you I was going to practice this. Sassy Southern Susan says, I don't care what anyone says. Maya deserves every single dollar awarded to her. This hospital is just a disgrace. I happen to agree with you. And I said that I saw other YouTubers and other Core TV, for one, channels bashing the jury for awarding this kind of ridiculous amounts of money. And how could they award her this amount for, this one day and then for these 48 hours and all these millions of dollars? Like, people just don't get it. People just don't get it. You know who gets it? You guys who suffer with chronic pain diseases, you guys who suffer with CRPS and other disorders that cause you to be in pain 24/7, that you just put on a happy face most of the time because or you think that nobody wants to hear about it anymore. You guys who are victims and survivors of CA and CSA and DV, who know that there is no amount of money that you would ever accept to allow those things to happen to you. And there is no amount of money that you would accept for someone to take away your parent. So we get it. A lot of people out there don't get it. And, that's shocking to me, but not surprising. Hi, Little Biddle. Thank you for your super chat. Attorney Anderson's wife said the criminal complaint may be used in settlement talks to put this thing to bed. Yeah, well, I just said that. Hey, I didn't see her interview, but I saw she did do an interview, right, with Recovery Addict. I think I just saw that pop up in my feed while I was prepping for this to come talk to you guys. So, yeah, it could be. And I hope it settles. I hope Maya doesn't have to go through years and years and years of appeals, because I think that she's really going to do great things with her life. And I think she's going to be an advocate. And I know she said she didn't want to become an attorney, but I hope she becomes some kind of an advocate. And I hope she can live a normal life. And all this media attention will hopefully go away and people will stop following her around. You're right, Sarah. No price can be put on validation, right? And I think and I hope that she feels validated and she feels heard. And these numbers support that. And this jury was amazing. It was amazing. I've heard that juror number 1 has come out and he wants to talk. I don't know if you guys know if he has given any interviews. I think YouTube would be the place to do it, because we'll let him talk for 2 hours. If he goes on Cuomo or Good Morning America or the Today Show, they'll give him 3 minutes. So call me. If you want to come on, we'll talk. Tish says, hello, Tish. Yes, she did. Great group of strong, smart women. Mrs. Anderson and the paralegals. They are all family. Yeah. Seems like that. Dr. Corcoran told me before the show, he said, I would really like it if we could talk about Kyle. He said, because I really, I feel like Kyle's been a little bit lost in this, and Kyle's really important, you guys. So prayers up for Kyle. And it was so nice of Dr. Corcoran to say that, that we can't forget about Kyle in all of this. This is, the entire family is affected. Hi, Jen. Joe, I hope all the jurors are very careful about what they say. If you're the defense, will twist anything said for the appeal. Yep. We know, we've seen it. You know, they were lurking in my chat, in other chats, in all creators chats, because they wanted to see what the general public had to say. And who's the general public? You guys. You guys were a lot more sympathetic in this chat than most chats because you are all of these things that I mentioned before. And so your opinions were a little bit more plaintiff oriented, I think, but some of the chats were not and are still not. Hi, Christina. I think about Kyla a lot. I sent Maya and Jack some of the products I designed and made sure to include lots of options for Kyle. That's so nice. That is so nice. Did you send them to the attorney's office? That's probably the best place that you could send them because their address is public. And, you know, if you want to send them a card or whatever, that's nice. Hi, dehydrated slime. Rob didn't tell him not to talk. He just wanted him to clear what he means to say with Anderson to preserve the verdict. I don't know that this juror going to Anderson would be the right move because it would come out later that he did speak to Anderson about what he was going to say. And then that could cause a whole other set of problems. My advice, I think, would be to go to an independent attorney that had nothing to do with this case. But that's just my opinion. Listen, if you ask 5 lawyers for an opinion, you will get 5 different opinions. And that's okay. I mean, everyone's got their thing, right? There's a lot of lawyers out there, and there's a lot of lawyers on YouTube, and everybody's got a different opinion. Hi, Matthew Frank. Did Maya have a puppy? The puppy understands humans better than humans. Pet therapy? I don't know. Do you guys know? Maria and Cream, I suspect the negative remarks on other chats are young idiots. No, you'd be surprised. There were a lot of older people on there. A lot of older people. Hi, Ruby. Nice to see you. Yes, an independent attorney would be better. I agree. I think so too. I don't think he should talk to Anderson at all because then whatever conversations he has with Anderson are going to become discoverable because they are not said under attorney-client privilege because he was a juror on Anderson's case. It's a whole mishigas, people. It's a very, very complicated dynamic. That's my opinion. But, you know, I practice in New York, so I don't know. Maybe it's different in Florida. I don't know. This Aussie just wants to say thanks. Thank you for watching all the way from Australia. Thank you, AJ. Great interview. Great guy. He really is so great. There's my Cali girl. Thank you so much for your super sticker. Hello, Lynn. I might be able to put you in contact with Gypsy's stepmom if you want to have her on. It's been quite a while since I talked to her, though. Yeah, I would. I told you guys I would love to talk to Gypsy Rose Blanchard. I did a whole show about her getting out on parole. She's coming out next month, and I would love to talk to her. And this is a safe place. Yeah, Lynn, if you could set that up, this would be a safe place for her to come. All she needs to do is watch a couple of my shows. She should go back and watch the show that we talked about her getting out on parole and how we were all happy. We thought she did her time and that she should be released. Thank you, Margie, for your super sticker. I appreciate you. Oh, hi, Gothic Brina. You emailed me the 49-page IJ report. You're giving me homework? Thank you. Thank you, honey. I'll take a look at it. Thank you for, we did look at this. Okay, we did see that before, and I'm sure there's some new members in here that I forgot to thank. And Laura, thank you so much for your very generous super sticker. And to all of you guys, Laura Christine, thank you for becoming a new member. I'm not sure if I missed anybody. Oh, Cheesy became a new member. We had our first members only live the other day. It was really, really fun, right, you guys? Thank you, Tish, for becoming a member. It's really our first month of membership. I just started this channel in, I think, the end of June, and it's growing quickly and carefully and steadily thanks to, and I don't come from the law tube world. I really did not even know that this existed until some of you guys brought this to my attention, this whole thing that went on the other night on another channel. Like, I come from the YouTube world of law enforcement. That's where I got my start on Police Off the Cuff and Duty Ron, both great friends of mine. I came on as a legal analyst on those shows, and those are very, very different types of shows. True crime from retired NYPD detective and sergeant's perspective. So this whole law tube thing is very new to me, and I'm just going to do my own thing, and I'm going to do it the way that I want to do it, and I don't need to, be on any panels of other lawyers. I don't think that works well. That said, it would be nice to have a couple of women do a stream together. I'm thinking. So, yes, thank you, Laura Christine. Duty Run is great. He's amazing. All right. Thanks, you guys, moderators. Thank you so much. I know this chat kind of flew by tonight and it was really busy. And you guys are the best. Donna Marie Scott is here. I think the Pranzos are here. Patron Disclo is here. If there's anybody I missed, I apologize. But you guys are amazing. Remember, be cool, be kind, be classy. It's not hard. Be sure to comment, be sure to subscribe and like the video. It helps push out the algorithm. I love you guys. And I'm going to see you again real soon. And to all the replay viewers, thank you too. Please hit the thumbs up on your way out. Peace.